Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Krame Center for Mindful Living. Welcome back to those of you who are a regular part of our mindfulness community and meditation group. And a warm welcome to anyone who's joining us for the first time. Just a little bit about us. We are a global nonprofit organization whose mission is to make the benefits of mindfulness, self-compassion, and positive psychology accessible to all. And our goal is to help people become more resilient and live better lives through our various programs. We offer affordable pricing and scholarships, as well as these free weekly meditations. And our current theme is living with an open heart. And this week's theme is the art of surrender. And this is particularly meaningful to me, this subject matter, given what's happening in my own personal life. So I'm really looking forward to exploring this. It's a good reminder for me, and I'm really looking forward to exploring the art of surrender with all of you. So we're going to explore how surrendering to our experience with an open heart really allows us to live in the flow of life. And surrender certainly is an art. It takes practice to yield to the situation as it is. But we know that our resistance to what is creates an added layer of unnecessary stress and even suffering when we're dealing with an unwanted situation, a difficulty, or loss of some kind. Resistance is this internal struggle that happens when we believe that our moment-to-moment experience should be different than it is. And it makes sense that we want to resist difficult emotions and experiences rather than accepting them. Plain and simply, there are certain things that we just don't want to experience or feel. However, the mistake that we make is thinking that resisting is the best way to get rid of the pain or the challenging situation. And part of the reason for this is that resistance often feels successful in the short term. And we may also be in a state of resistance rather than acceptance in order to protect ourselves. So resistance is quite complex in that it involves the situation that we're faced with, the unwanted emotions that arise, and the negative nature of our accompanying thoughts. Right, so signs of resistance are, well, when we're distracted, getting lost in worry or rumination, when uncomfortable emotions arise and we feel irritated, sad, or a sense of despair even. Resistance in our emotions would be feeling frustrated or angry that things are the way they are. And when we feel physically tense, or if we are numbing ourselves, resistance in the body could be the physical sensations that we experience, like tension in the shoulders, a knot in the stomach, and a whole host of other things. Our thoughts during resistance are negative ones. I wish I didn't have a headache. I wish my mind wouldn't be wandering so much while I meditate. And all of these lead to more stress, more suffering. There's an equation that sums this up quite well. Pain times resistance equals suffering. And rather than accepting and being with the situation for what it is, we wish it were different, or we wish it were not there at all. And often when we experience an event that we don't like, rather than surrendering to it and accepting what is here in the moment and then moving forward, our perception is clouded by the resistance. Or we get wrapped up in a story. We experience thoughts, judgments, beliefs about what we're experiencing, such as, I shouldn't be tired, or my body, oh, it's the worst because of my back pain. We will experience pain, challenges, or difficulties, right? We know that. Unfortunately, it is an inevitable part of life. However, we do have a choice as to whether or not we add to our suffering. And the truth is that resisting pain and negative emotions, rather than accepting them, makes things worse in the long run, not better. In trying to get rid or in trying to rid ourselves of the difficulty, we often create more difficulty. And there's another expression that sums that up quite well. What we resist persists. And unfortunately, when we resist unpleasant experiences, they don't typically go away. On the contrary, it adds fuel to the fire. So when we can learn how to surrender to what is happening because it is already happening, we can operate from a more balanced place and with greater equanimity. This isn't about resignation or throwing in the towel, but rather it's about creating the space in which we can move forward from with greater clarity and greater intention, right? So when we minimize the resistance to any of our life challenges, we remove that added layer of excessive mental noise and rumination and negative thought patterns. And when we can do this, we are living in the flow of life, swimming downstream with greater ease rather than fighting against the upstream current. When we yield rather than resist, we're much more likely to see things as they really are in any given moment, which really also allows us to have a more accurate perception of the events, right? Just like there's this expression that possession is 9/10 of the law. I'm sure you've all heard of that one. Well, I like to say our perception is 9/10 of reality. So with a more accurate perception, there's a greater chance that we're going to make better choices in how we deal with life's challenges. And surrendering to the moment is really an intentional act that requires acceptance, a measure of letting go or letting be. And this includes accepting what's happening without judgment, not labeling the situation good or bad, and not being indifferent to it either. It means that even though we may not like what's happening, we acknowledge what is already happening. And of course, this can be very challenging depending on the situation or even the moment that we're faced with. So again, I just want to stress that acceptance is not approval. Acceptance is also not passive resignation, and it doesn't mean inaction. It simply means surrendering to the experience, acknowledging what has already taken place, and then responding rather than reacting with a plan to move forward. So rather than resisting what's occurring in the moment-to-moment experience, we can try to allow or maybe even befriend what is here, if that's a possibility, right? And in these moments of difficulty and challenge, we can offer ourselves kindness and self-compassion in the process. And so one last piece of this is that there's also a physical component to the act of surrendering, which is why cultivating the mind-body connection is so important. You know, we've talked about the obstacle of resistance, but it's also important to understand that we can encourage surrendering by tuning into the senses and our body's innate intelligence. So in essence, it is a sense of letting go and giving yourself over completely without reservation or judgment to the unknown, right? And that can be a little bit scary. The first step in the process would be to bring an awareness to the moment as we focus on felt senses in the body, followed by a clear intention to surrender. And then a sustained and focused attention on letting go really allows us to actively surrender to the moment and to begin to sense it as a physical manifestation. And this goes a very long way in helping us to master the art of surrendering. We can practice being present in meditation. We do that all the time. And also practice surrendering to each moment as it comes. So if we keep our attention focused on the present, we can be sure of one thing, that whatever we're attending to in that moment will change, giving us the opportunity to practice surrendering to whatever it is that will emerge in the next moment. And so I want to just, before we move into the meditation, share with you a quote by Eckhart Tolle. Surrender is the simple but profound wisdom of yielding to rather than opposing the flow of life. All right. And so, with that, we're going to move into the more formal part of our meditation now. And so, just assuming a posture that feels right for you in this moment. And I invite you to close your eyes or soften the gaze. And then just allowing yourself to settle into the moment, maybe inviting a sense of arriving in the space you're in, arriving in the chair that you're sitting in, and then arriving in your own body. So arriving at your own door. And as you're settling into the body and into the moment, maybe also just noticing if there's any gripping or any tension. And if it's possible, inviting a softening in the belly, shoulders, the neck, the jaw. And now, as a way of further grounding into the moment and grounding into the body, turning your attention to the breath. So, not needing to change anything, but just following along with the breath as if you were with a good friend, and allowing the breath to be your anchor into this moment and into your body. And just following the rhythm of your own breath cycle, one breath at a time. Moment by moment. Nothing to do, nowhere to be, just being here, present with the breath in the moment, in your body. And then if the mind wanders, just gently ushering it back to the breath. Maybe noticing how the breath is in this moment. Perhaps by now it's shifted just a little bit, perhaps deepened just a little bit. And now, as you're ready, tuning into the body, being supported by the chair and inviting a softening and settling into the chair. And then, as best as possible, imagining the physical body releasing into the surface that's supporting you. And trusting in the support of your own body, the chair beneath you, the floor below your feet, and the earth below that. And with this trust, can you let go and surrender to the simple support of this moment? Just letting go of the body, sinking into the seat, softening into the seat. And just tuning in to what this feels like. So just exploring this idea of physically letting go into the support that's surrounding you. And doing this a few times to see how it feels. Just to notice how it feels to let go, surrender, physically surrender into the support of the chair and your own body. Just tuning in and noticing maybe there's even a physical slackening or softening, or a sense of calm, maybe a notable lightness, perhaps, but perhaps not. So, also just allowing your experience to be just as it is, but continuing to invite this letting go, this physical letting go and sense of surrender. Maybe it almost feels as if there's an absence of gravity that's lifting a heavy load, and the body is responding with a feeling of weightlessness. Maybe even trying to imagine what it would be like to fall off the edge of a cliff and be shielded by the vast embrace of an invisible safety net. Or floating through space by calling to mind the sensation of free falling while in the dream state. So just staying and being with this practice of surrendering to what is, to the support of your seat, and to the support of your own body, and just trusting in that support. Just seeing if it's possible to explore what the sensation of surrender means to you in this moment. And knowing that you can always come back to this practice and explore it again. And now the invitation is to think about something in your life today that you are resisting. Maybe you are caring for an elderly parent and you're resisting the reality of the situation or resisting the sadness that you feel. Maybe at work you're experiencing anguish and frustration over a situation that involves a difficult boss or coworker. Or maybe you're experiencing anger over an inconsiderate neighbor who plays loud music at all hours or mows his lawn at 7 a.m. So just calling to mind a situation or emotions that you are resisting. And letting yourself feel what that resistance feel like. So tuning into the body and noticing, are there any physical sensations or tensions that arise when you think about this resistance? Perhaps there's tension in the jaw, neck, or shoulders, or maybe there's a band of tension across the forehead. And maybe for you, it's a heaviness in the chest or a pit in the stomach. So just becoming aware of the physical response to the resistance. And now, as you're ready, can you soften the resistance, even if it's only around the edges? Can you surrender to the reality of the experience just as it is, because it's already here? And can you allow yourself to feel the anger, frustration, sadness, despair, whatever the emotion is? And can you accept the emotions because they're here? Remembering they aren't right or wrong. Emotions just are. And here you may offer yourself some self compassion and recognize that everyone has these kinds of feelings at one time or another. You aren't alone. It's part of the human experience. So just taking a moment to soften, surrender, and allow. Soften to the resistance. Surrender to the reality of the situation. And if possible, accept and allow the emotions. Soften, surrender, allow. Just taking a few moments to make space for your experience in this moment. And now, as you're ready, releasing this practice of surrendering, knowing that you can return to it at any time. And then bringing your awareness back to the breath. One breath in, one breath out. Another breath in, another breath out. And now simply resting in your own experience, just as it was and just as you are in this moment. Perhaps keeping your eyes closed while we end with some very simple, wise words from Hafiz, a 14th century Persian spiritual poet and mystic. And he says, "We have not come into this exquisite world to hold ourselves hostage from love. We have not come here to take prisoners, but to surrender ever more deeply to freedom and joy." And now gently opening your eyes, taking a moment to reorient to the space, perhaps a stretch or two, wiggling fingers and toes. And I just want to say thank you so much for your practice today. I'm going to leave you with a weekly invitation and a couple of announcements. So the invitation for this week is to practice this sense of softening, of letting go, of surrendering as a physical softening and trust during your meditations, and see what happens. And then 2 announcements. We have a spring mindful self-compassion course beginning April 28th on Thursday evenings from 6:30 to 9 p.m. And we have our spring mindfulness-based stress reduction course beginning May 6th on Friday mornings from 9:30 till noon. And these are both 8-week courses. All right, well, thank you all for your practice. Take good care and be well. See you soon.